Let's start with just the news that's broken here in the last half hour or so. The SEC has joined the parade, and they're going to go conference only. Now only the Big 12 remains to see what they're going to do to fill out their schedule. A reaction to the SEC's decision today?
No surprise. It's sort of, followed the leader. And the good news is they have a plan to play.
Yeah.
That more than anything. You heard it for a few weeks there. You sort of wondered, and this was coming from the head guy with the SEC. He wasn't the most optimistic guy around. Now, all I know is if I was laying in a hospital bed and I was sick, I didn't want to hear it from him how bad off I was, because he didn't sound very optimistic at that point. And now at least you have a plan in place of what will happen. It's a little later start. That I don't have an issue with that, and it's a little later finish to everything, and I don't have an issue with that either, to be honest with you. And so it gives you a little bit more time to kind of solve some of the other issues that are going to be involved here, because if you're going to play, it also means about putting people in the stands, and so. That's an issue that everybody's kind of still ping-ponging around at this point. But at least you have a plan in place. And if you look at it and how it's being done and how this schedule may turn out, take a look at what Florida has added to the schedule.
Yeah.
In Alabama and Texas A&M. So for all these people beating their chests about Florida, you catching Georgia this year, I think you may just have had somebody flip you a trump card. That may not be the case. You may be left out of that.
Well, and it is worth noting that the revised schedule is going to be announced at a later date. And Mike, I've seen the same thing you have. We talked about it a good bit. It looks like you'd play your next two rotating opponents,
Correct.
But unless if you know something I don't, I'm just quickly scanning the release here from the SEC, and it doesn't say that that's been confirmed yet. But Mike, I don't even know what other format they might.
You would have no other basis for that. So that would mean LSU would play Kentucky and Tennessee.
Right, at Kentucky, home against Tennessee. Which is Mike? Which is the most favorable of any team in the SEC when you look at their draws?
Man, look, at this stage, I'll take that.
Yep,
I'll take that at this stage of the game. And so, again, the good news is that you have a plan in place and you are scheduling to roll with this. Now, listen, a lot of things can happen between now and September 26th. But it also, too, Matt, I think the important thing is, like anything else, when you because I've been involved in a lot of these group-type situations where you make a decision. It gives you a little bit of time, okay? We still in July. It's late July, but you still in July. You've got a little bit of time to work out some details. And you had to have it now. You had to have a plan in place by the end of July, first couple of days of August to get this rolling. It buys you a little bit of time to work out some of the details of how it's going to be done, but the plan's in place, and I think everybody will kind of follow suit here, in sort of in line, which really wasn't started by the SEC, and I think for a lot of people across America that think it's okay, it's the top conference in college football, and you sort of waited it out. You were waiting for somebody else to make a decision before you made yours, which I think is quite interesting, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
That you're the leader of the pack, and you sort of said, I'm just going to take a seat back and see what everybody else does. So the good news is it looks as though that at least you're going to see some football. It'll be late September, and it'll end middle of December, which Matt, to be honest, I don't have a problem with that.
I know. Give me more. Give me more football later. I'm good with it. Mike, this is worth noting, and this is a minute ago. Ross Dellinger tweeted this about the two additional SEC games. He said he's told a separate scheduling model composed by the league office using strength of schedule will determine the 2 additional opponents. So it looks like they're not going to go with that model of
if that's the case, then all bets would be off then.
Yeah.
Because if that's the case, and you're going to do this by strength of schedule, and that's a new one added to the mix here. And I think what you heard is some people in high places at different universities, and I'm sure you heard it from people at Florida, said, wait a minute here. Look what we drew up. Look what you handed us.
Right.
And so that's a totally different situation as far as scheduling is concerned and how it's going to be worked out. If you're going to go by strength of schedule, then that plays a different part into the game. But you know what? No matter who you put on there, get ready to play.
Yeah. Mike, and obviously LSU winning the SEC last year means you draw a tougher opponent
schedule.
and you've already got, theoretically you've already got Florida on the schedule, but I guess they would just crumple up the existing schedule, throw it in a trash can, and move forward with what the new composed schedule would look like. So we're all going to learn this as we move forward together. But you're right, Mike. It's great that we're talking college football. One more on this, Mike, because we were talking about this last hour. Do you obviously, and I'm not trying to date you here, Mike, but you obviously know of a time in football when schedules like this were the norm, where you didn't really have the 3 gimme games on schedules.
Nope.
Like, do you think that this might be, albeit as unorthodox a scenario, reason that we came to this conclusion, but do you think this might sort of be the entree into potentially returning to this format where we see all of these really good games again?
I'm for more SEC games.
Me too.
I'll be honest with you. And I get it. And it does hurt, even the school right down the road from me.
Yeah.
That was a big money game for Nicholls State to play LSU. And LSU has done this with other schools. If it's been Northwestern State, or they try to do a big game, but that didn't work out because of the weather situation.
Oh, that was the McNeese game, in 2015.
Yeah,
yep.
McNeese.
Yep.
Yeah, so that didn't work out too well. We got off the bus, got back on, give us our money, and we're going back home. Yeah, and no injuries on that particular game. So it certainly hurts that, but I think for the quality of football, of what people want to see, I think that's a big positive, to be honest with you. I mean, I would rather that.
I would.
And listen, that's nothing against what was being done. I get it, to give a payday to a state school and that sort of thing, but competitive-wise, you would rather see that. And maybe something like this kind of pushes you into something you should have done to begin with.
Well, if they do, Mike, it's going to have to be something that's uniform across college football, because it's hard to imagine any one league making that decision while the others don't follow suit. But I'm hopeful anyway that this is
well. You better have a leader to pack there, because again, this is where one conference doing one thing, another conference doing another, and not having someone in charge to say everybody's going to do it. To me, out of everything that's happened, isn't that the most glaring thing that has showed up in college football and college sports?
Absolutely.
That there is no guy in charge. And now you're letting everybody kind of make individual decisions or conference decisions. No, somebody's got to be the buck got to stop with someone. And now everybody's looking out for their own interests at this point. And you know what happens there when that happens? It's not good for anyone. Because all you're concerned about is you. All right? You're not concerned about everybody else, but you want your share of the money. No matter what, you want your share. I do believe that there's always something that positive happens, even in the most negative of situations. And you got to look for it. And I think for college sports is the fact that you don't have a guy that's really in charge of everyone. And I'm going to make the decision, like it or not. That's just the way it is. My word is law, and we're going to end it at that point. And I think more than anything, I think you've seen it in college sports today, that there is no one in charge. And the scary thing, everybody's looking out for their own self-interest. Yeah. And I get that. That's kind of how we are in life. We're looking out for ourselves. But if you're part of a conference, that's not the case.
Super Bowl at bust, in all honesty. That's like that's it. I mean, it's not really anything else past that. It's Super Bowl or bust. You know, whether we don't get to the big dance, it was a failure of a season. So.
Super Bowl or bust. You're not in the Super Bowl, it's a failure of the season. Terron Armstead not mincing words, and you know what? I don't think anybody's going to bat an eye at that because I think that is the expectation around here. Visiting with Mike Detillier, saintsreport.com, MikeDetillier.com. We'll get to your questions for Mike about 30 minutes from right now, so you can start to line them up. Email, Twitter, Huddle, or in the YouTube chat as well, on the 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge YouTube channel. You can watch us there and join the chat. Mike D., you heard Terron Armstead's comments. What did you think?
Well, it's, I think, what every Saints fan I've heard since January say about 2020. And listen, if you don't have that mentality as a player, then you shouldn't be playing.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's deal is to get to the Super Bowl. And then once you get there, it's to win it. But for this team, it's a little bit different. Because I've made this kind of comparison, sort of growing up in the 70s. The Saints are the Oakland Raiders of the 70s. You lost in some of the most unbelievable manners late in the season. Now, for the Saints, they did win it in 2009, and the Raiders did have one championship season in the 70s. But, man, they had some crazy ways to lose in the 70s. If it was to the Steelers, Dolphins, you name it. They had it. And so I get what he says, and I agree 100%. But I think that's the mentality. Because in reality, every once in a while, there's a Cinderella team. Every once in a while, the glass slipper fits. But we all know, I think, before the season, there are probably 8 or 9, and you might stretch 10 teams that legitimately have a shot at this. And so the rest of the time, you're just filling out the schedule.
Mm-hmm.
I do believe for the Saints, in understanding what you bringing back on offense, what you bringing back on defense, your special teams unit basically returning intact, your coaching staff, all but one guy returns, you've got to have that mentality. And you sort of heard the Surly showing yesterday, talk. He was in typical Sean mood. And, and I think what he wanted to send that message. And if you listened to Orgeron, he's the same way at LSU. He is sending a message to his team, talking publicly. And I think Sean sent that message out yesterday that, hey, you better be ready when you get here. And you here now, and it won't be tomorrow you working out, but pretty soon it will. You better have yourself ready because I'm getting yourself ready, and I'm getting this team ready for the start of the regular season. There is no preseason. There is no regular workouts or workouts, whatever. We got to adjust, but my job is to get you ready to play football. And I think you kind of heard Sean a little bit salty yesterday. And I think that was his way of sending that message to his football team. In the same manner, you heard Coach O talk at the Rotary Club yesterday and talk about we loaded on offense. And what did he say about his defense?
Got to be better than they were last year.
In essence, he sent a message to his defense. But all these sports writers, all these guys that come on TV and radio want to talk about all the talent on the defensive side of football. Look, all the high draft picks we had a year ago, and we didn't play really that well. We were inconsistent all year long. You don't think that was a little bit calculating? That he's sending his message out there to players on the defensive side of football. And Sean sent his message out yesterday, too. So both of them got it across what they wanted to get across. And they did it in their own manner. And so, I agree with Terron 100%. But the Saints really, in reality, are one of the 8 or 9 teams in the NFL that have a legitimate shot at this. You might be able to throw a dart, and it happens every once in a while. But for the most part in the NFL, you know who those good teams are. And I do think that having not a lot of change is a help to this Saints football team. You bringing back a lot of the same guys, basically your entire coaching staff with the exception of Mike Nolan, I do think is a big advantage than, say, a team that has made moves on the coaching staff-wise, has made a lot of personnel moves. that it just takes a little while to piece together a football team. And with no OTAs and no camp and all this other stuff, I do think that gives them a little bit of a built-in advantage, especially early in the season, especially early, when there's going to be some ununiform, so to speak, play of not having having no game action.
Mm-hmm.
I do think it's a built-in advantage for teams like in New Orleans, like a Kansas City, which returns most of the people that they had a year ago. Now, they've had a couple people opt out. Green Bay is another team I can think of pretty quickly that also has a lot of people returning off the club from a year ago to 49 or similar. I do think it's an advantage.
Mike, it's almost like you read my notes, like we've been doing radio together a little while. I was going to ask you about your reaction to Sean Payton yesterday. But was there anything else aside from his tone that he said, materially has involved the team that struck you yesterday?
Not really. Kind of what he has said, again, I think he wanted to get his message across that, hey, listen, this is not going to be a regular camp, but I'm preparing you for the regular season. And that, you had your chance now to get yourself in shape. And that was what was the last thing he told him? Hey, listen, we're not going to have these workouts, but you better come in the best shape you can come in. And Sean kind of saw the forest ahead of the trees. He was the first one to opt out. The Saints were.
Mm-hmm.
Sean kind of foreseen what was going to happen here, but I think he laid that message out that maybe in the past we had a few guys that maybe didn't come in the best shape. And they had a starter last year, and a good one. And Larry Wolford didn't come in really good shape. And Bad Sean, he didn't like that part of it. And, again, Larry's, they cut him loose, and basically now he's going to opt out for the year.
Yep.
And I've told you this since the start. Larry's considering retirement more than anything. I think that was the reason why the Saints kind of cut him loose, because Larry had been back and forth about it. Did he want to play? Did he not want to play anymore? But we talked about this in April and May, that it was obvious that he was unsure of what to do. He had made a lot of money, family, everything else now, what he wanted to do you really want to push it? Because you got to want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
You got to want to be in great shape. And as a big guy, it's hard. It's hard to push that plate. And it's just a few words, but it's hard to say I'm full. It's hard to wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning and go work out. It ain't easy. And no matter what you're getting paid, it's hard to do it. Now, for some guys, that's not an issue. They'll do it. But for some others, especially big men, it's difficult for them to get away from that plate and go work out and everything else. So I just think overall what Sean said yesterday was basically what I thought he would say. He did say about what I think is going to be the most intriguing thing on offense, and that is alternating McCoy and Ruiz at the center and guard positions. Because if anything, to me, you would really want to see it's that. Because the other guys are returning, and Sanders is going to fit in very well in your offense. But how that is up front, because I do think that he has always paid special attention to the middle of his offensive line. And understanding how the game is changing. Now, you're getting much more interior pressure. He's always put a big emphasis on the center guard position, more so than any other coach that has ever coached here. He has put a tremendous interest in that area to make sure that his quarterback has a clean pocket to throw. And look how he's paid people. If it's been Jari Evans, he tried to make Carl Nicks the highest paid guard in the league, and instead Tampa made him the highest paid guard. So he goes out and get Ben Grubbs. He has done it over and over and over again at that center guard position, and I think that's the one for me offensively. That he sort of is telling you, we're going to work and see how it's done. We saw it last year with McCoy. Zach Strief and I were watching one of the practices, and it's all about timing. and McCoy was getting ready to snap, and all of a sudden, you could see Drew was looking for the ball, and next thing you know, Armstead and Pete, they downfield. McCoy still got the ball in his hands. So it took a little while. No, that's the truth. It took a little while for that to come around, and because it's the timing of 5 guys working as one. And no matter what, even if you played that position, it's a little bit different. The calls and the cadences and everything else, it's a little bit different. And how that works out between McCoy and Ruiz, because already Sean has told you, he didn't draft Ruiz to be a backup.
Right.
He's going to be a starter. Either he's going to be your starting center or your starting guard. But where does he start? Where does he start off at? And are you going to be willing to say, okay, back-to-back years now you get a new starting center for your quarterback? Are you going to do that? Now, I think in 2021, I have no doubt Ruiz is going to be the center, and McCoy is going to be moved to the guard position. And I'm almost 99.9% sure on this. Ruiz's best position is center, but he may play guard this year. They may make that decision. We're better off with Eric this year playing that center position when we make the move next year.
We talked about Larry Warford, but bigger picture, I'm kind of in that category where it's a little bit of skepticism with some of the guys where they might just be taking a guaranteed payday and an accrued year toward being vested. What do you make of the general decision for these guys opting out?
I spoke with a gentleman who's involved in the NFLPA, and he sort of foresaw this. He told me this over a week ago, that he thought that would be a number of opt-outs to the NFL. And he said, there were some obvious reasons why. Mm-hmm. You have some guys with pre-existing conditions that they have some issues with. And I get that part. And there's some family issues involved with it too. So the number did not surprise me one bit, because basically he had sort of told me, Mike, there are going to be some teams hit harder than others. You may have some teams just sort of nicked. A guy that may have been a guy that was going to go and try to make a team, but wasn't really going to be part of your final roster cut. So the number did not surprise me based off that conversation with him, because I think he had already kind of heard it from different members and player-wise that there were going to be some of that. And we see it would happen in New England with a number of them there pulling out. And then Damian Williams yesterday with the Kansas City Chiefs, and they had already lost a player already, and the gentleman was a doctor. So none of that is a real surprise. I think the overreaction was one really good Caleb Farley, cornerback from Virginia Tech. He decides to opt out, that he's not going to play this year. And, man, that's all I got was, this is going to be, a ton of college players pull out of there. Madam, that part I'm not sure about. I think you may have some, but I do not think you will have that in huge numbers. You think about it last year. At this point, no one would get on your show and say Joe Burrow is going to be the top overall pick in the draft. No one would have said Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to be a first-round pick running back, and the only one. Jefferson's going to be a first-round pick. Patrick Queen, okay, he's the guy who started 4 games the year before. He's going to be a first-round pick. You had no one say that. And no one nationally, and if you said it, come on. You better hope you ain't on a lie detector machine. You blow them circuits clean off the wall. So I guarantee that part. So you get for a lot of players, and I understand with it's a little bit different with him. And he is a first-round pick talent. There's no question. And will it hurt him for the NFL draft? Absolutely not. It's not going to hurt him. Because I hear, people are going to say he opted out. The NFL could care less. Okay? You got a lot of film on him, Farley, at this point. You got a lot of film on him. You know what he can do and what he can't do as a player. And I think you'll see a few more, but it's not going to be this huge exodus out of there, because you know what? They got a lot of Joe Burrows and Clyde Edwards-Helaire's and Justin Jeffersons and Patrick Queen's out there that you didn't think right today those guys would be first-round pick players. Now, a year ago, we could have said about Caleb that one was, pretty obvious. But for a lot of other players, it's not as obvious. And you got to go out there and prove it. So for the NFL, I get it. And for some players, it wasn't a huge surprise to me. And I think some of it, certainly you have to look at a little bit of history with them health-wise and kind of health-wise around them. And listen, I respect that just like I respect the guy that's going to go play.
Sure.
If you're opting out because of health reasons and concerns about it, just like you would, you have some family issues. I get that part about it. 100%. I get about it. Now, here's the part that I think is important. The fact that you just can't jump back in Game 8.
Yeah, that's true.
Because to me, okay, you can't. And the NFL kind of put the door there. That that's not going to happen. But to me, you can't sit out all of this and then 9th game of the season. Oh, I've decided I'm going to play. It don't work that way.
He's on Twitter at Mike Detillier. We'll get your questions for Mike in a little less than 10 minutes from right now. Mike, one other thing we got to touch on here. Mickey Loomis was asked and was predictably evasive about Alvin Kamara's contract. So I guess I could ask you point blank, Mike, do you think they get it done before camp?
I have never believed the start of training camp ends negotiations.
Okay.
Alvin's not sitting there with Mickey. He's got a guy doing that for him. Alvin's deal is to go out and practice and to play games. So I've always believed that deadline, some people say, oh, he didn't sign, so he's not going to sign. If you look back in history, there are people that are signing new contracts in August and in early September.
Can you think of any with the Saints, Mike, just offhand? I know I didn't ask you that before. Because I went and looked up recent ones like Mike Thomas and Drew Brees' latest deal and, Armstead and Cam Jordan. And all those have, there's a big gap, right? But Mike Thomas signed his last year July 31st. Yep. So tomorrow will be 1 year from, right on the edge of camp. I know you and I have talked about that a bunch with Drew Brees. They'd always get it done right before camp, and they did. I was having trouble finding any that got done during camp or later.
No, because I know Drew sort of thought that maybe something like that would happen with him. But I think they were sort of far off, and then they never could ease the gap. Mm-hmm. But he signed in July also. I know the first one with this was, it was 2011 or 2012, somewhere in that range. I was at the Manning camp when all that happened. That was early to mid-July.
Yeah, I think it was 2011, Mike, because if I remember, that was during the lockout, and he was practicing with his teammates while he wasn't under contract.
Right, and so I don't remember one right before them signing that deal. The only one, Thomas Morstead, off the top of my head, I think he may have been in camp when that deal got done. Again, I'm not somewhere I could look it up, but I want to say Morstead was one that they may have done in the August time frame. Again, it's a punter, but Thomas got paid pretty good in that time frame. So I would not say that because training camp started, the deal for Kamara is not going to get done. Same thing with Dalvin Cook in Minnesota, because we have seen in the past with other players those deals did get done a little bit later.
Be interested to see if they get done, Mike. I looked up Morstead. That was July 23rd. Or July 26th. July 26th.
Okay, so it was a late one similar to Thomas.
Yeah. So they've always, it seems like they kind of get it done in this week. So I'll just be interested to see do you still firmly believe that they get it done with Kamara this year and not wait until next year?
I've always believed it because of the lack of hearing anything.
Yeah. Okay.
Mickey has said zilch. Well, he doesn't really say it anyway.
Right.
But when it's been contentious, there's been sort of the ping pong between the Saints and an agent. And you have heard nothing with Kamara. I stick with this. I do think the Derrick Henry deal with the Titans which came down to the bewitching hour with him. That was, I think, what you're looking at, the blueprint of what Cook and Kamara will get. I think it's going to be, it might be a little south of that, might be a little north of it, whatever, but it's going to be in that range of what Derrick Henry got. And so Derrick Henry's deal gets done, and I think you're going to see, and I really believe for both, looking at it and knowing the longevity of running backs in this league, you know, if you got a pretty good deal in front of you, you take it. Because that list of running backs next year is pretty lengthy.
Oh, yeah. And
every year we see, just like this year, there were 4 or 5 running backs all kind of jammed together as late first-round pick, early second type people. I think you also have to know the market here. But Alvin's more than a running back because of the fact of his receiving skills. He gives you that huge option as a receiver coming out of the backfield. And that's why the Panthers paid Christian McCaffrey the kind of money he's got. And nobody's going to catch him, at this stage. Nobody's catching McCaffrey.
Right.
But you look at him, he's just not a runner, and he is a bell cow runner. I mean, he's carrying a heavy load. He's also a tremendous receiver coming out of the backfield. I think when you have that skill set, you pay it. I think a lot of people were a little bit surprised because the Titans really hadn't used Derrick much as a receiver. He was the big, heavy-duty runner. And those guys seem to have a little bit of wear down, a little quicker than the guy that can catch the football coming out of the backfield. In essence, Kamara might be touching the football 23 times a game, but he's rushing it 16, 17, he's catching 5 or 6 passes. With Derrick Henry, he's rushing the football 23 times, catching 1 pass.
Right.
So, yes, I'll answer it. I still think there is a very good chance they get this deal done.
All right, Mike D, let's start with an email. Got a bunch in here. A lot of roster questions, as you might imagine, with the Saints. Does Nick Easton make the Saints' final roster?
Yeah, because of his versatility. He has started at both center and guard. So yeah, I think that's a pretty easy one that Nick makes it for this year. Matt, let me throw this out too.
Sure.
Now with teams back in camp and that you're in there going to be able to take physicals and everything else, I think to watch for the Saints is what happens at corner, because I know I've kind of beat the drum here about this the last couple of months. But if you look at this Saints roster, with Janoris Jenkins on one side, Lattimore on the other, okay, you good there, but where's the depth? And because P.J. Williams is really a nickel safety inside cornerback. Patrick Robinson's a nickel cover cornerback. How much does he have left in the tank as a player? What else you have at corner? I think, listen, if you're going to make a move, and there's a couple guys out there, if it's a Logan Ryan, if it's a Drake Kirkpatrick, that you could make that move because you don't have much depth at cornerback if you got to play them outside. And that's got to be something that has rolled through the Saints, because, listen, if you get nicked up, what's going to happen on the other side?
Sure.
And I do think that this is the time, because now you can bring in players and for those physicals and everything else. If you're going to make a move, now it's going to be the case. And if there's one spot on this roster, when you look at lack of depth at a position, it's that outside cover cornerback position.
Do you have a feeling, Mike, which direction they might go? If it's a Logan Ryan, if it's a Drake Kirkpatrick, or somebody else?
No, I think it would be a veteran, a guy that's played that position. I don't want another rookie. I got a couple of them already. And so I can see what the rookies can do. But, it's coming down to price of how much money that particular player is going to want. But you got guys that have done it before, and Ryan has played both the nickel and outside, and so has Drake Kirkpatrick. He's played both in the nickel and he's played outside. They would fit on this defense very, very well, either one of them.
Mike, it's actually just really good to be talking about roster competitions instead of COVID. But here's another one. Ask Mike, do you think Thad Moss will make the team in Washington?
That's interesting with him. Especially I think the bond with him and Haskins is going to be something to watch. Because I do think with a young receiver, that ability to kind of, be on the same wavelength, and they're going to give Dwayne every opportunity to be the guy.
Mm-hmm.
He's who the owner wants. The owner wants him to be the quarterback. I mean, he picked him. He wants him to be the starting quarterback in Washington. I think that's going to be something in training camp to watch. But Thad Moss can play in the NFL. I mean, it's just, is Washington the right fit for it? And the one thing I do know with Ron Rivera is that he has spent a lot of time. If you look at Greg Olson's production in Carolina, it was pretty doggone good, wasn't it?
Yeah.
You know, he knows how to use the tight end, a guy that can catch the football going downfield. In fact, can play at the NFL level. There's no question in my mind.
See if we can get a couple more in YouTube chat. Here's one from Staten Dubois. It says, ask Mike, how much will Jamal Adams' contract affect Lattimore's value?
Well, they play different positions. And that didn't surprise me with Jamal because you think about Pete Carroll, when he was at USC, he had a guy similar to him in Troy Polamalu.
Mm-hmm.
That he just wasn't a box safety. I hear, he's just a box safety. That's a bunch of horse hockey. Look at how Jamal was used. They used him as a blitzer, like a linebacker. They put him back sometimes in center field. They used him all over the board, similar to what he did with Polamalu at USC. And I remember Coach O telling me, man, I've never given a safety that much latitude to do what he wants to do. Jamal's going to have that. But Adams' contract has nothing to do with Lattimore. Lattimore's looking at those young corners and what they're going to get paid. That's what you're going to have to gauge it off of. But, for short term and the way Seattle picks, and they've wasted a lot of first-round picks on guys that I didn't think were really first-round pick type people. Man, listen, that's the right fit. And all Pete Carroll had to do was get on the phone and call his old buddy Ed Orgeron and said, tell me all you need. Tell me about Jamal Adams.
It's going to work out pretty well. It's still an interesting trade. We haven't gotten too deep into it, Mike. We only got 30 seconds left. But all that Seattle gave up for him, it'll be interesting to see how that all pays off. Mike Detillier with us every Thursday. You know where to find his stuff. SaintsReport.com, MikeDetillier.com, Saints News Network over at SI.com, and with us every Thursday. Mike D, you the man. Have a great rest of your week. We'll talk next week.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.